Marcus Reynolds stared in disbelief as the plane made an emergency landing at a small regional airport in rural Montana. Armed security personnel stormed down the aisle, headed straight for his first-class seat. His crime? Requesting his special herbal tea on the New York to San Francisco flight. Now, his multi-billion-dollar merger was in jeopardy. His legal team was scrambling across 3 time zones, and somehow, he had become a suspected terrorist. All because a white flight attendant couldn't imagine a black man legitimately sitting in first class. Could a simple request for tea really destroy everything he'd built? Before we begin this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from. If you believe in justice and standing up against discrimination, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on more powerful stories that expose the truth about racial injustice in America today. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Marcus Reynolds' penthouse apartment in Manhattan, casting a golden glow across the sleek modern furniture. At 43, Marcus had climbed to heights few black entrepreneurs ever reached. As CEO of Tech Fusion Enterprises, he stood on the precipice of history with a $4.8 billion merger that would revolutionize the tech industry and create the first black-owned major tech conglomerate in America. Marcus moved with practiced precision through his morning routine. His kitchen gleamed with polished marble and stainless steel as he carefully prepared his special medicinal herbal tea, a blend of rare roots and leaves from West Africa that soothed the chronic throat condition he'd developed after a bout with thyroid cancer 3 years ago. His doctor had prescribed this specific remedy when conventional medications caused severe side effects that interfered with his ability to speak clearly during presentations. "Can't afford to lose my voice today," Marcus murmured, carefully, pouring the amber liquid into his insulated travel container. The mixture smelled strongly of herbs and spices, earthy and distinctive. As he packed the container into his briefcase, memories flashed through his mind. 20 years ago, he'd been a young coder with big dreams, sleeping on a friend's couch and coding 18 hours a day. When he'd gone to his first investor meeting with his revolutionary security algorithm, the receptionist had assumed he was delivering food. The venture capitalist had kept him waiting for 3 hours, then offered him 1/10 the funding typically given to white founders with less impressive prototypes. "Mr. Reynolds," his assistant's voice came through the apartment's communication system. "Your car is downstairs, and I've just received confirmation from the San Francisco team that everything is prepared for the signing ceremony tonight. Mr. Zhang from Global Tech has already arrived at the hotel." "Thank you, Tamara," Marcus replied, straightening his custom-tailored Tom Ford suit. This merger had been 2 years in the making. Global Tech's founder, Wei Zhang, had recognized the value of Tech Fusion security innovations when the tech giants had dismissed them. Together, their companies would create a technological powerhouse that could finally challenge the Silicon Valley establishment. Stepping into the private elevator, Marcus felt the familiar weight of expectation on his shoulders. The journey to this day had cost him his marriage, countless sleepless nights, and required navigating a business world that still viewed him as an outsider, despite his success. The Bloomberg profile last month had described him as articulate and surprisingly sophisticated, coded language that still made his jaw clench when he thought about it. 90 minutes later, Marcus strode confidently through JFK Airport, his first-class boarding pass for Flight 1380 to San Francisco in hand. The merger documents were securely stored in both digital and physical form in his briefcase. His team had arranged everything perfectly. He would land at 4 p.m., have 2 hours to refresh at the hotel, then finalize the historic deal at 7 p.m. at Global Tech's headquarters. As he approached the premium boarding lane, the gate agent glanced up, then did a double-take before painting on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Marcus was used to this look, the momentary confusion when people saw a black man in spaces they mentally reserved for white people. "Boarding pass, please," she said, her tone suggesting she expected to find something wrong with it. Marcus smiled politely as he presented his phone. "Good morning." She scanned it, looking mildly surprised when it beeped its confirmation. "Enjoy your flight, sir." Boarding the plane, Marcus settled into his first-class seat 2A by the window. As other passengers filed in, he noticed the subtle glances, the slight narrowing of eyes from both crew and white passengers. A middle-aged white woman in 2B did a visible double-take before sitting beside him, clutching her purse a little closer to her body. The flight attendant, a blonde woman whose name tag read Elaine Whitfield, moved through the first-class cabin, offering pre-departure beverages to the passengers. She smiled warmly at each of the white passengers, engaging in friendly banter. When she reached Marcus, her smile tightened, becoming professional rather than warm. "Something to drink before takeoff?" she asked, her voice noticeably cooler. "Just water for now, thank you," Marcus replied, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the familiar sting of differential treatment. As the plane prepared for departure, Marcus reviewed his presentation one last time on his tablet. The merger would not only consolidate two innovative tech companies, but would create thousands of new jobs, including positions specifically designed to bring more people of color into the tech industry. It was more than a business deal. It was a statement about the future of American innovation. He was so engrossed in his work that he almost didn't notice when the white passenger across the aisle leaned over to Elaine and whispered something while glancing in his direction. The flight attendant nodded slightly, her eyes flicking briefly to Marcus before moving on. Marcus took a deep breath. He'd experienced these microaggressions throughout his career and had learned when to confront them and when to focus on the bigger picture. Today, the merger was what mattered. He would not let anything disrupt his concentration or tarnish this achievement. Little did Marcus know that his routine flight was about to become a nightmare that would threaten everything he had worked for. As the plane took off from New York, carrying him toward what should have been his greatest triumph, forces were already in motion that would turn his simple request for tea into a national scandal, exposing the ugly reality of how quickly success and dignity could be stripped from even the most accomplished black man in America. 30 minutes into the flight, Marcus felt the familiar scratch in his throat beginning to intensify. The dry cabin air always aggravated his condition, which was precisely why he never traveled without his medicinal tea. He pressed the call button, and within moments, Elaine Whitfield appeared beside his seat. "How can I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but distant. "I have a medical condition that affects my throat," Marcus explained calmly. "I brought my own herbal tea. Would it be possible to get some hot water, please?" Elaine's expression shifted subtly, her eyes narrowing. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't allow passengers to consume unknown substances on the aircraft." Marcus blinked, momentarily confused. Just 3 rows ahead, an elderly white man was drinking a specially prepared hot toddy that Elaine herself had helped him mix from his own small bottle of whiskey. "It's just herbal tea," Marcus clarified, reaching for his briefcase. "I have medical documentation about my condition if that would help. I drink this on flights regularly." "I don't need to see any papers," Elaine replied, her voice taking on an edge that drew the attention of nearby passengers. "It's against our policy to allow outside beverages to be consumed." Marcus maintained his composure, though his throat was growing increasingly uncomfortable. "I understand your concern for safety. This is a medicinal tea that helps with my throat condition. I have documentation from my doctor, and the TSA had no issues with it." Elaine's posture stiffened. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. You're becoming aggressive." Marcus hadn't raised his voice at all. In fact, he'd been speaking more softly than the conversations happening around him. He noticed several white passengers watching the interaction now, some with phones partially raised as if preparing to record. "I apologize if I've given that impression," Marcus said carefully. "I'm simply trying to explain that this is medically necessary for me. Perhaps I could speak with the head flight attendant." "I am the senior flight attendant on this flight," Elaine responded, her tone becoming increasingly hostile. "And I need you to understand that when I give instructions regarding safety protocols, they need to be followed without argument." The white businessman in the seat across from Marcus leaned forward. "Excuse me," he said loudly, addressing Elaine, but looking at Marcus. "I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable with the situation here. Is everything under control?" Elaine turned to the man with a completely transformed demeanor, sympathetic and reassuring. "Everything is fine, sir. I apologize for any disturbance to your flight." Marcus felt the familiar weight of being viewed as a threat simply because of his skin color. He'd faced this throughout his career, the assumption that any self-advocacy from a black man was aggression, any disagreement was hostility. Deciding to try one more approach, Marcus carefully removed his medical documentation and his company ID badge. Perhaps this will help clarify things. I'm the CEO of Tech Fusion Enterprises, heading to San Francisco for an important business meeting. This tea is prescribed by my doctor for a medical condition. Instead of reassuring Elaine, this seemed to make the situation worse. Her expression hardened further, as if his credentials were somehow threatening rather than clarifying. Are you implying that we should give you special treatment because of your claimed position? She asked, emphasizing the word claimed in a way that made it clear she didn't believe him. By now, several more passengers were openly watching and recording. The white woman sitting next to Marcus had edged as far away from him as her seat, aloud, clutching her purse as if he might steal it at any moment. Not at all, Marcus replied, maintaining his professional tone despite the growing knot in his stomach. He'd been in enough of these situations to recognize the dangerous direction this was heading. I'm simply providing context and explaining that this is a medical necessity, not a preference. I'll need to confiscate that container, Elaine said abruptly, extending her hand. Unknown liquids are a potential security risk. Marcus stared at her in disbelief. This passed through TSA screening. It's just tea. Sir, I won't ask again. Elaine's voice was stern now, her hand still extended. Have you ever been in a situation where you were treated unfairly just because of how you look? Comment number 1, if you believe Marcus deserves respect regardless of his skin color. Hit that like button if you think what's happening on this flight is a clear case of discrimination that needs to be exposed. Subscribe to our channel to stand against injustice and share stories that need to be told. Do you think Marcus should give up his medically necessary tea just because a flight attendant doesn't believe a black man could be a CEO? Or should he stand up for his rights like any other passenger? What would you do if you were in his shoes? In the cockpit of Flight 1380, Captain Bradley Harrington frowned as his intercom buzzed. He was a 25-year veteran with the airline, known for running a tight ship and maintaining strict hierarchies among his crew. Captain, this is Elaine, came the senior flight attendant's voice. We have a situation in first class that requires your attention. What kind of situation? Bradley asked, his eyes still fixed on the navigation displays as they cruised at 36,000 feet over the Midwest. There's a passenger in 2A who's being, she paused significantly, difficult. He's attempting to consume an unknown substance from an unmarked container. When I explained our safety policies, he became confrontational. The co-pilot glanced at Bradley, raising an eyebrow. Has he made any threats? Bradley asked. Not explicitly, Elaine replied, her voice lowered as if sharing a secret. But he's a large black male who's becoming increasingly agitated. He's claiming to be some CEO and demanding special treatment. Several passengers have expressed concerns about his behavior. Bradley's jaw tightened. In the post-9/11 era, any potential threat was taken seriously, and in his experience, it was better to overreact than underreact. Keep an eye on him. I'll alert ground control that we may have a situation. Back in the first-class cabin, Marcus had reluctantly surrendered his tea container to Elaine, who carried it away as if handling hazardous material. His throat was now painfully dry, and he knew that without his medication, his voice would be severely compromised by the time they landed, potentially jeopardizing his ability to properly present at the merger meeting. Marcus discreetly removed his phone and sent a text to his chief of staff, Aisha Johnson. Facing discriminatory treatment on flight. Flight attendant confiscated my medication. Potential escalation. May need legal team on standby. Within seconds, Aisha replied, documenting timeline now. Stay calm. Don't give them any excuse. Legal team alerted. What airline and flight number? Before Marcus could respond, he noticed a flurry of activity among the flight crew. Flight attendants were huddled near the galley, casting furtive glances in his direction. A male flight attendant he hadn't seen before appeared, positioning himself in the aisle with a beverage cart, creating a barrier between the first class and economy sections. The co-pilot's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your first officer speaking. We ask that all passengers remain in their seats with their seatbelts fastened at this time. The flight attendants will be temporarily suspending service while we navigate some turbulence ahead. Marcus looked out his window. The sky was perfectly clear, with not a cloud in sight. There was no turbulence. His phone buzzed with another message from Aisha. "Something's wrong. Your flight path just changed on the tracker. Are you diverting?" A chill ran down Marcus's spine. He glanced at the flight path display on his seatback screen and saw that they were indeed veering northwest, away from their direct route to San Francisco. 2 rows behind him, Marcus overheard a white passenger whispering loudly to his companion. "I bet it's that black guy in 2A. Something's not right about him. Been acting suspicious since we boarded." Marcus had done nothing but sit quietly, work on his presentation, and request his medication. Yet somehow, in the eyes of the crew and passengers, his mere existence had become threatening. The plane began a gradual descent. There had been no announcement about their change in course, but the shift in engine noise and cabin pressure made it clear they were no longer maintaining cruising altitude. A younger flight attendant approached his seat, visibly nervous. "Sir, the captain has requested that you surrender your electronic devices at this time. May I ask why?" Marcus inquired calmly, though his heart was racing. "It's a security protocol," she replied vaguely, extending a plastic bag. "I'd like to speak with the captain," Marcus requested, making no move to hand over his phone, his only connection to his team and the outside world. The flight attendant's expression hardened. "Sir, this is not a request. The air marshal has been notified of the situation." As if on cue, a stern-looking man in plain clothes stood up from a seat in the 3rd row of first class. He hadn't been there earlier. He must have moved forward from economy during the commotion. "Sir, I'm a federal air marshal," the man announced, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "I need you to comply with crew instructions immediately and surrender any electronic devices and personal items you have with you." The cabin went completely silent. Every eye was on Marcus, dozens of passengers now openly recording the confrontation on their phones. No one was asking them to surrender their devices. "I've done nothing wrong," Marcus stated firmly but calmly. "I'm being singled out without explanation." The air marshal's hand moved subtly toward his hip, where Marcus could see the outline of a concealed weapon. "Sir, final warning. Comply now or I will be forced to restrain you for interfering with the flight crew." Marcus could feel his career, his company, and possibly his life hanging in the balance of this moment. With deliberate slowness, he placed his phone in the plastic bag, followed by his tablet, but kept his briefcase with the merger documents closed beside him. "My name is Marcus Reynolds, CEO of Tech Fusion Enterprises," he said clearly, making eye contact with as many recording passengers as possible. "I want everyone here to know that I have complied with all airline policies and have done nothing to warrant this treatment." The air marshal stepped closer. "Hand over the briefcase too. It contains confidential business documents for a $4.8 billion merger happening tonight," Marcus explained. "I cannot legally surrender these documents to anyone." "That's not my concern," the air marshal responded coldly. "Hand it over now." As Marcus reluctantly surrendered his briefcase, he glanced at one of the seatback screens still displaying the flight map. They were descending toward what appeared to be a small airport in rural Montana, hundreds of miles from any major city, and certainly not an airport that would normally receive a commercial airliner of this size. Through the cockpit door, which had been briefly opened during the commotion, Marcus caught a glimpse of a security monitor near the captain's controls. With a surge of disbelief, he saw his own face on the screen, captured from the cabin security camera with text below it reading, "Possible threat, unidentified substance, non-compliant." The plane banked sharply, beginning its final approach to an airport in the middle of nowhere. Marcus Reynolds, who had started his day as a respected CEO on the verge of making history, now sat handcuffed to his first-class seat, labeled a security threat, and heading for an ordeal that threatened to undo everything he'd spent his life building. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Harrington speaking." The pilot's voice crackled through the cabin speakers, an undercurrent of tension evident beneath his professional tone. "Due to a security concern, We are making an unscheduled landing at Elk Ridge Regional Airport in Montana. Please remain calm and seated with your seatbelts fastened. We will provide more information once we're on the ground." A collective murmur of concern rippled through the cabin. Passengers frantically texted loved ones or filmed the unfolding drama. The white woman next to Marcus had requested to be moved, and now his row remained conspicuously empty except for him, creating a visible isolation that marked him as the apparent cause of their diversion. Marcus's mind raced through the potential consequences. The merger signing was scheduled for 7 p.m. Pacific time. Even if this misunderstanding was cleared up immediately, which seemed increasingly unlikely, he would miss the deadline. 2 years of work, hundreds of jobs, and a historic moment for Black entrepreneurship in the tech industry hung in the balance. Without his phone, Marcus couldn't contact his team or Wei Zhang at Global Tech to explain the situation. For all they would know, he had simply failed to show up for the most important meeting of his career. Through the window, Marcus could see the small regional airport coming into view. It was nothing more than a single runway, a modest terminal, building, and what appeared to be 3 local police vehicles with flashing lights already positioned on the tarmac. How had they responded so quickly, unless they'd been called well before the diversion was announced to passengers? The plane touched down roughly on the short runway, the pilot applying the brakes aggressively enough to throw passengers forward against their seatbelts. As they taxied toward the small terminal, Marcus could see more vehicles arriving: county sheriff cars, an ambulance, and what looked like a hazardous materials response unit. "This is absurd," Marcus muttered to himself, the reality of the situation becoming increasingly clear. A simple request for T to manage his medical condition had somehow escalated into a full-blown security response appropriate for a terrorist threat. The aircraft came to a stop far from the terminal building. Through his window, Marcus could see law enforcement officers in tactical gear assembling, some with weapons drawn. The scene was surreal, all of this for a black man who had asked for hot water for his tea. "Attention all passengers," Elaine's voice came over the intercom, a note of manufactured calm in her tone. "Please remain in your seats. Security personnel will be boarding the aircraft. This is standard procedure." Standard procedure for what? Marcus wanted to ask. Instead, he sat perfectly still, hands visible on his lap, knowing that any movement from him might be interpreted as threatening. The aircraft door opened, and 3 officers in tactical gear boarded, followed by the local sheriff, a burly man with a crew cut, whose hand rested casually on his holstered weapon. "Hands where we can see them," one of the tactical officers shouted as they moved down the aisle directly toward Marcus, as if they had been shown exactly where to find him. Marcus kept his hands on the armrests, palms down. "My hands are visible, officers. I've done nothing wrong." "Stand up slowly and turn around," the lead officer commanded, ignoring Marcus's statement. With deliberate movements, Marcus complied. In full view of every passenger on the plane, the officers roughly handcuffed him. "Marcus Reynolds, you're being detained under suspicion of interfering with a flight crew and making terrorist threats," the sheriff announced loudly. "What threats?" Marcus asked in disbelief. "I never made any threats." "You're in possession of an unidentified substance that you attempted to consume despite crew instructions, and you became combative when questioned," the sheriff replied, reciting what had clearly been reported to him without witnessing any of it himself. As they escorted Marcus down the aisle toward the exit, he could hear passengers whispering and see phones recording his walk of shame. One passenger loudly said, "I knew something wasn't right about him from the beginning." The blinding Montana sun hit Marcus's eyes as he was led down the stairs onto the tarmac. The cold mountain air bit through his suit jacket. In the distance, he could see someone in hazmat gear approaching with his tea container, treating it as if it contained a biological weapon rather than dried herbs. Before being placed in the back of a sheriff's vehicle, Marcus turned toward the passengers watching from the plane windows and the crew standing at the aircraft door. With dignity despite his handcuffs, he stated loudly and clearly, "My name is Marcus Reynolds, CEO of Tech Fusion Enterprises. Today you are witnessing racial profiling that destroyed a $4.8 billion business deal. Remember what you saw here." As the sheriff's car door slammed shut, Marcus caught a glimpse of his reflection in the window. Just hours ago, he had been a powerful executive on the verge of making history. Now, he was a suspect being transported to a rural sheriff's station, his future hanging by a thread. Meanwhile, on social media, videos of his detention were already spreading like wildfire. The first posts came with captions like, "Potential terrorist removed from our flight," and "Suspicious man with unknown substance detained." His identity wasn't immediately recognized in the early videos, but it would only be a matter of time before someone connected the dots. As the sheriff's vehicle pulled away from the airport, Marcus closed his eyes briefly, centering himself for the battle ahead. He had overcome discrimination his entire life to build his company. Now, he would need every ounce of that resilience to save everything he had worked for, clear his name, and expose the injustice of what had happened on Flight 1380. The Elk Ridge Sheriff's Station was little more than a low-slung brick building with a few holding cells, a dispatch area, and 3 desks. As Marcus was led through the front door in handcuffs, every person in the building stopped to stare. For many, he was likely the first black CEO they'd ever seen, though they didn't know that's who he was. To them, he was just another black suspect. "Got a flight risk diverted from a commercial airliner," the sheriff announced as he guided Marcus to a metal folding chair beside one of the desks. "Possible terrorist threat." The word terrorist hung in the air, immediately transforming how everyone in the room perceived him. Marcus kept his expression neutral, knowing that any sign of the anger or frustration he felt would only reinforce their prejudice. "I'm going to need my phone call," Marcus stated calmly, "and I want to speak with my attorney." The sheriff, whose nameplate read Sheriff Dave Kinnick, chuckled. "You'll get your phone call when we're done processing you, big shot, and we'll see about that attorney. First, we need to know exactly what was in that container." "Herbal tea," Marcus replied evenly, "for a medical condition affecting my throat, as I've explained repeatedly." "Sure it is," Sheriff Kinnick responded, his tone making it clear he didn't believe a word. "The hazmat team is testing it now. If it's just tea like you claim, why'd you get so aggressive when the flight attendant asked you about it?" "I wasn't aggressive at all," Marcus stated. "That's a complete mischaracterization of what happened. I simply asked for hot water for my tea, which I need for a medical condition. The flight attendant refused, took my property, and escalated the situation unnecessarily." Sheriff Kinnick leaned forward, invading Marcus's personal space. "Listen here. I got a report from a captain with 25 years of experience saying you were threatening his crew and trying to consume an unknown substance that could endanger the aircraft. You think I'm going to take your word over his?" Before Marcus could respond, the door opened, and a deputy entered with Marcus's briefcase and personal belongings in evidence bags. "Need to inventory these," the deputy said, dumping the contents of Marcus's briefcase onto the desk without care for the confidential documents inside. "Those are private business documents," Marcus protested. "They contain confidential merger information worth billions of dollars." Sheriff Kinnick laughed, out loud. "Billions, huh? And I suppose you're the CEO of Apple or something?" "Tech Fusion Enterprises," Marcus corrected, maintaining his composure. "My name is Marcus Reynolds. You can verify my identity." The sheriff picked up Marcus's company ID and corporate credit cards, studying them with obvious skepticism. "Fancy?" "Fake IDs. We'll add identity fraud to the charges." Through the window, Marcus could see news vans arriving in the parking lot. Word had spread quickly. On a small television mounted in the corner of the room, he caught a glimpse of a breaking news chyron. "Flight diverted. Suspicious passenger detained in Montana." His heart sank as he realized that within minutes, his face would be splashed across national news before he'd even had a chance to contact his team or legal counsel. "I need to make my phone call now," Marcus insisted, his voice firm but not raised. "This is all a misunderstanding that's spiraling out of control, and there are significant business matters at stake." "You'll get your call when I say you get your call," Sheriff Kinnick replied, clearly enjoying the power he held over a man he couldn't believe was actually a CEO. The door opened again, and a young deputy entered with a tablet. "Sheriff, you might want to see this. That guy's face is all over Twitter. Some people are saying he really is some big-shot CEO." Sheriff Kinnick grabbed the tablet, his expression shifting as he scrolled through what was undoubtedly social. media posts about the incident. Marcus could see that the narrative was already forming without his input, his reputation being shaped by strangers who had witnessed only fragments of what happened. "Check this out," the sheriff said, turning the tablet so Marcus could see. "Your stock is dropping like a rock. Guess your shareholders don't like their CEO getting arrested." The screen showed TechFusion's stock price in free fall, already down 18% and continuing to plummet as news of his detention spread. Millions of dollars in company value were evaporating by the minute. Just then, a phone rang on a nearby desk. The deputy who answered it looked increasingly uncomfortable as the conversation progressed, casting glances toward Marcus. "Sheriff," the deputy called, covering the mouthpiece. "It's Global Tech's legal department. They're asking about Marcus Reynolds and saying there's a major merger being jeopardized." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Sheriff Kinnick's face for the first time. "Tell them he's being detained as part of an ongoing security investigation." The deputy relayed the message, then listened for a moment. "They say they're going to pull out of the merger if Reynolds doesn't make contact within the hour. Something about a contractual deadline." Marcus closed his eyes briefly, the full weight of the disaster crushing down on him. Everything he had built, all the barriers he had broken through, the thousands of jobs that would be created by this merger, all of it was slipping away because he had committed the crime of being black and first class and asking for his medication. When he opened his eyes, he saw that more news alerts were flashing across the television screen. The story was evolving rapidly. "TechFusion CEO detained on flight," one headline read. Another crawl stated, "Markets react to Reynolds' arrest. Tech stocks tumbling." "I need to make that call now," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around him. "Every minute that passes is costing my company millions of dollars and affecting thousands of employees." Before Sheriff Kinnick could respond, the door opened once more. A deputy hurried in with a printout. "Lab results on the liquid, Sheriff. It's just tea, herbs and plant extracts. Nothing illegal or dangerous." The sheriff's face reddened slightly, but he showed no remorse. "That doesn't change the fact that you interfered with the flight crew and caused a disturbance," he said to Marcus, doubling down despite the evidence contradicting the basis for Marcus's detention. On the television, the news now showed Wei Zhang, Marcus's merger partner, giving a statement outside Global Tech's San Francisco headquarters. "We are deeply concerned about the treatment of Mr. Reynolds. If he is not released immediately and allowed to fulfill his obligations under our agreement, we will have no choice but to terminate the merger discussions and seek damages." The reality of the situation was finally beginning to dawn on Sheriff Kinnick. What had started as a routine detention of what he assumed was just another troublemaker was rapidly evolving into a high-profile incident with international business implications. "Get him his phone call," the sheriff finally ordered, though his tone remained hostile. "But he stays in custody until we sort this out completely." As a deputy led Marcus to the phone, he caught sight of his reflection in a window. His tailored suit was wrinkled, his confident CEO demeanor replaced by the universal posture of the unjustly accused. In the eyes of the law and much of the public, his achievements, education, and position had been instantly erased, replaced by stereotypes and assumptions based solely on the color of his skin. The deputy pointed to the outdated wall phone. "Make it quick." Marcus picked up the receiver, knowing that his company's future hung in the balance of this one phone call. As he dialed his chief of staff's number, he could hear the newscast in the background reporting that TechFusion stock had now plummeted by over 25%. "Have you ever seen someone judged not by their character, but by the color of their skin? Comment, number 1, if you believe Marcus deserves better treatment regardless of what he looks like. Hit the like button if you're outraged by how quickly a successful black businessman can be reduced to a suspect in the eyes of authorities. Subscribe to hear stories that expose the reality of racial profiling in America today. Do you think Marcus can still save his company in the historic merger, or has the damage already been done? How would you feel watching your life's work crumble because someone couldn't believe a black man belonged in first class? "You have exactly 3 minutes, announced Deputy Wilson as he closed the door to the small interrogation room, leaving Marcus alone with the wall-mounted phone, its coiled cord stretched taut. "Aisha, it's Marcus," he said the moment his chief of staff answered. I don't have much time. Marcus, thank God. Aisha's voice was a mixture of relief and panic. What's happening? The news is saying you've been arrested as a security threat? The global tech people are threatening to walk unless you're in San Francisco by 7. I need you to activate Emergency Protocol 3, Marcus said, referring to the crisis management plan they had developed years ago for worst-case scenarios. Contact Sophia Washington at Civil Liberties Law Group. Get her to Montana immediately. Already done, Aisha replied efficiently. She's on a private jet as we speak. What happened? In terse sentences, Marcus explained the sequence of events while Aisha took notes. As a black woman who had risen through corporate America herself, she understood immediately the racial dynamics at play. The stock price? Marcus asked, dreading the answer. Down 32% and still falling, Aisha confirmed grimly. The board's in emergency session. Jameson and Phillips are already suggesting a vote of no confidence. Marcus wasn't surprised. The two white board members had opposed his leadership from the beginning, constantly questioning his decisions, despite his track record of success. Wei Zhang? He asked, referring to his merger partner. He's standing by you publicly, but his investors are pressuring him. He's extended the deadline to midnight Pacific time, but that's as much as he could do. Deputy Wilson opened the door, tapping his watch. Time's up. Aisha, I need you to... The line went dead as the deputy hung up the phone. Back to the interview room, Deputy Wilson said, gesturing to the door. The interview room was a stark space with concrete walls painted an institutional green, containing nothing but a metal table and 3 chairs. Sheriff Kinnock was waiting, along with a man in a rumpled suit who hadn't been there before. Mr. Reynolds, I'm Detective James Morley with the Montana State Police, the suited man introduced himself. We have some serious questions about your activities today. Marcus sat down, keeping his back straight and his expression neutral. My activity today consisted of boarding a flight to attend a business meeting, nothing more. Sheriff Kinnock slammed his hand on the table. Cut the act. Captain Harrington has filed a formal complaint stating that you made threatening statements and refused to comply with safety directives. That is categorically false, Marcus stated firmly. I never made any threats, implied or explicit. I simply requested hot water for my medically necessary tea, which your own tests have confirmed is exactly what I said it was. The captain says otherwise, Detective Morley said, sliding a printed statement across the table. According to his report, when instructed to surrender your unknown substance, you became belligerent and stated that, and I quote, "You'll regret this," to the flight attendant. Marcus shook his head in disbelief. That never happened. I never said those words or anything like them. There were dozens of witnesses and multiple people recording. The videos will show exactly what happened. Conveniently, cell service is spotty out here, Sheriff Kinnock remarked with a smirk. Not many of those videos making it online just yet. It dawned on Marcus that this remote location wasn't just inconvenient, it was strategic. By landing in a rural area with limited connectivity, the airline had effectively controlled the narrative during the crucial first hours of the story breaking. I want my lawyer present for any further questioning, Marcus stated. Lawyers take time to get to Elk Ridge, Detective Morley replied with a shrug. Meanwhile, we have a statement from a highly respected airline captain about your threatening behavior. That's enough to hold you while we investigate. The tea tested negative for any illegal or dangerous substances, Marcus pointed out. The entire basis for this detention is demonstrably false. The issue isn't the tea anymore, Sheriff Kinnock replied. It's your interference with the flight crew, which is a federal offense. Captain Harrington has made serious allegations. Allegations that are false and racially motivated, Marcus responded firmly. Detective Morley leaned forward. Playing the race card already? Maybe in your world, everything's about race. But out here, we're just concerned with public safety. Before Marcus could respond, a commotion erupted in the outer office. Raised voices, including one with the unmistakable authoritative tone of a person accustomed to commanding attention in courtrooms. The door swung open, and a tall black woman, in her 50s, entered, impeccably dressed in a designer suit that made Sheriff Kinnock's uniform look like a costume. She carried a leather briefcase and an air of absolute authority. "This interrogation is over," she announced without preamble. "I'm Sophia Washington, counsel for Mr. Reynolds. Any questions for my client will go through me from this point forward." Sheriff Kinnick stood up, his face reddening. "You can't just barge in here." "I just did," Sophia interrupted crisply. "And unless you want to explain to a federal judge why you're violating my client's constitutional rights, I suggest you give us the room." She placed a document on the table. "This is a demand for immediate release. The detention of Marcus Reynolds is unlawful, discriminatory, and is causing quantifiable financial damages that now exceed $100 million and counting." Detective Morley studied the document. "This doesn't change the fact that we have a complaint from the captain. A complaint contradicted by physical evidence and soon to be contradicted by video evidence," Sophia cut in. "I've already filed emergency motions in federal court. Additionally, I've spoken with the governor's office, who is very concerned about the potential economic impact on this state if its law enforcement is perceived as participating in a racially motivated detention that destroyed a multi-billion-dollar business deal." The mention of the governor had an immediate effect on both men. "We're just following procedure," Sheriff Kinnick muttered defensively. "Then your procedure is flawed and potentially actionable under federal civil rights statutes," Sophia replied. She turned to Marcus. "My team has secured the flight manifest and is contacting passengers to obtain their videos. We're also filing preservation orders for all airline communications and the cockpit voice recorder." Marcus nodded, feeling hope for the first time since this nightmare began. Sophia Washington was legendary in civil rights circles, having won landmark cases against corporations and government entities that engaged in discrimination. "Meanwhile," she continued, addressing the law enforcement officers, "my client's company is losing millions of dollars by the minute. If he is not released immediately to attend to his business obligations, we will add that as compensatory damages in the lawsuit that will name this department, the airline, and the individual officers involved." Sheriff Kinnick and Detective Morley exchanged glances, clearly recognizing they were outmatched. "We still need to complete our investigation," Detective Morley insisted weakly. "You can investigate without keeping my client detained," Sophia responded. "The T has tested negative. There is no evidence of any threat, and there are substantial economic interests at stake." Just then, a deputy rushed in, looking alarmed. "Sheriff, you need to see this. Major news networks are all carrying the story, and they've got passengers from the flight saying it was racial profiling. The airline's stock is starting to drop now, too." The balance of power in the room shifted visibly. What had started as a routine detention based on unchallenged racial assumptions was rapidly becoming a public relations disaster with significant financial implications. "Mr. Reynolds will remain available to answer any legitimate questions through counsel," Sophia stated, gathering her documents. "But he is leaving with me now." Sheriff Kinnick knew when he was beaten. "He can go, but we're keeping his passport until the investigation is complete." "My client's passport will be returned to him immediately," Sophia countered. "He has international business obligations that cannot wait." After a tense standoff, the sheriff nodded to Deputy Wilson, who left and returned with an evidence bag containing Marcus's personal effects, including his passport. As Marcus collected his belongings, the deputy whispered to the sheriff just loudly enough for Marcus to hear. "Tech news sites are reporting that if Reynolds misses this merger signing, over 3,000 jobs won't be created, including 500 that were planned for the new office in Helena." The sheriff's expression soured further at the realization that his actions might have economic consequences for his own state. Sophia checked her watch. "We have a helicopter waiting. Mr. Reynolds has precisely 5 hours to reach San Francisco before irreparable damage is done to his company and the American technology sector." As they prepared to leave, Marcus paused at the door and turned to Sheriff Kinnick and Detective Morley. "Gentlemen, I hope you understand what happened here today. A black man in first class was presumed dangerous rather than successful. That presumption has cost my company millions, threatened thousands of jobs, and nearly destroyed a historic merger. Remember that the next time you make assumptions based on the color of someone's skin." With that, he followed Sophia out of the sheriff's station, where news cameras were already assembled. The story of Marcus Reynolds was no longer just about one man's humiliation. It had become a national conversation about race, power, and the fragility of success for even the most accomplished Black Americans. The sleek black helicopter lifted off from the small field adjacent to the Elk Ridge Sheriff's Station, carrying Marcus and Sophia toward the nearest major airport in Billings, Montana. Inside the climate-controlled cabin, Marcus was already deep in crisis management mode, using Sophia's secure satellite phone to reconnect with his team. "Aisha, we're airborne," he reported, his voice still raspy from his untreated throat condition. "What's our status?" "It's bad, but we're fighting back," his chief of staff replied. "The stock has stabilized at 34% down." The board voted against a no-confidence motion, 6-2. Zhang has extended the deadline to midnight, but his investors are nervous. "We need to control the narrative," Marcus said, his strategic mind already formulating a multi-pronged approach. "Where are we with the video evidence?" "That's our first good news," Aisha replied. "We've secured footage from 12 passengers. So far, it clearly shows you were calm and professional throughout. The airline's claims are falling apart by the minute." Marcus turned to Sophia. "We need those videos authenticated and released strategically." "Already happening," Sophia confirmed, typing rapidly on her laptop. "I have digital forensics experts verifying them now to prevent any claims that they've been manipulated. We're preparing a comprehensive timeline that will dismantle the airline's version of events." Marcus nodded approvingly. "What about the cockpit recordings and internal communications?" "We've filed emergency preservation orders," Sophia explained. "My associate delivered them to the airline's headquarters 20 minutes ago. They're legally obligated to preserve all evidence. Now," Marcus turned his attention back to the phone. "Aisha, we need to stabilize the company. Activate the executive team for emergency protocol. Richardson should handle operations, Chen takes communications, and Davis manages investor relations. Tell them I want hourly updates and complete transparency with our major stakeholders." "Already done," Aisha confirmed. "But there's something else you should know. Our security team has been monitoring communications, and there's something unusual about this incident." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, his instincts sharpening. "The speed and coordination of the response seem planned," Aisha explained, cautiously. "The captain diverted to a remote airport with limited media access. Law enforcement was waiting before the announcement was made to passengers, and the narrative hit certain news outlets with remarkable speed and consistency." Marcus and Sophia exchanged glances, both coming to the same conclusion. "This wasn't just random racial profiling," Marcus stated. "Someone wanted this to happen." Sophia nodded grimly. "The question is who benefits from derailing your merger and damaging TechFusion's stock price?" As if in answer to her question, Aisha's voice came through the speaker. "Marcus, our analytics team just flagged something. There was unusual trading activity in TechFusion stock just before your flight. Someone was shorting our shares heavily." "Who?" Marcus demanded. "We're tracing it, but the transactions were routed through multiple shells. Preliminary analysis points to holdings connected to Westmore Enterprises." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Richard Westmore was a rival tech CEO who had tried to acquire TechFusion's security patents 2 years earlier. When Marcus refused to sell, Westmore had vowed to put him in his place, a comment that had racial undertones even then. "Pull up everything we have on Westmore's connections to the airline," Marcus instructed. "Board members, major shareholders, executive relationships, everything." While Aisha worked on that, Marcus turned his attention to more immediate concerns. "What's our transportation plan once we reach Billings?" "Private jet standing by," Sophia answered. "It'll get you to San Francisco by 10:30 p.m. Pacific time, giving you 90 minutes before Zhang's deadline." "Not enough cushion," Marcus decided. "We need a backup plan in case of any additional coincidental delays." "I've arranged for a second aircraft on standby in Bozeman and secured priority clearance with air traffic control through a contact at the FAA," Sophia replied, demonstrating why she was considered one of the best crisis attorneys in the country. Marcus nodded approvingly before returning to the call. "Aisha, what do we have?" Her voice was tense with excitement. "Marcus, we found it. Westmore's private equity division acquired a 7% stake in the airline's parent company last month. And Captain Bradley Harrington? He received a $50,000 consulting fee from a subsidiary of Westmore Enterprises 2 weeks ago. And the flight attendant? Elaine Whitfield? Marcus asked, the pieces falling into place. Her brother works as a mid-level executive in Westmore's Seattle office. She received a wire transfer of $20,000 3 days ago from an LLC that traces back to Westmore's personal attorney. Marcus felt a cold fury building inside him, but also a grim satisfaction at having uncovered the truth. They set me up. This whole incident was orchestrated to prevent the merger and crash our stock. It gets worse, Aisha continued. Breaking news. Westmore just announced a hostile takeover attempt, offering to buy Tech Fusion shares at 40% of their value from yesterday. He's trying to acquire control while our stock is artificially depressed. The helicopter began its descent toward Billings International Airport, where their private jet awaited. As they prepared to land, Marcus saw a news alert flash across Sophia's laptop. Tech CEO Marcus Reynolds released after misunderstanding. Race questions linger. They're already trying to spin this as a simple mistake, Sophia observed, her expression hardening. We can't let them minimize what happened. We won't, Marcus assured her. Aisha, are you still there? I'm here. Implement phase 2 of our counter-strategy, Marcus instructed. Release the verified videos to select journalists who understand the racial dynamics at play. Have our technical team prepare a detailed breakdown of the stock manipulation evidence. And tell Zhang I'll be calling him personally in 30 minutes. What about Westmore's takeover attempt? Aisha asked. Contact our allies at other tech companies. Remind them what's at stake if Westmore succeeds. Innovation stifled, thousands of jobs lost, and diversity in tech leadership demolished. We need them to publicly stand with us. As the helicopter touched down, Marcus gathered his briefcase and prepared to board the waiting jet. The day that had started with such promise had turned into a battle for his company's survival and his personal legacy, but now, armed with the truth and a clear strategy, he was ready to fight back. One more thing, he told Aisha before ending the call. Tell the team to prepare documentation for a civil rights lawsuit and SEC complaint. When this is over, Richard, Westmore is going to learn that trying to destroy a black man's business through racial profiling isn't just morally reprehensible. It's legally actionable and financially ruinous. Marcus stepped off the helicopter onto the tarmac, the wind whipping his tie as he strode purposefully toward the private jet. He had 8 hours to save his company, complete the merger, and expose the corrupt scheme that had nearly destroyed everything he had built. The real battle was just beginning. The sleek private jet cut through the darkening skies over the Midwest, racing against time toward San Francisco. Inside the luxurious cabin, Marcus had transformed the space into a mobile command center. 3 laptops were open before him. His legal team was on a video conference on one screen, his executive board on another, and financial analysts on the third. The connection between Westmore and the airline is clearer now, reported Diane Chen, Tech Fusion's chief legal officer. Our investigators found that Westmore's private equity arm, Apex Holdings, acquired significant airline stock through 7 different shell companies over the past 3 months. And the flight crew? Marcus asked, his voice still raspy from his untreated throat condition. Captain Harrington has suddenly taken personal leave, Diane continued. But before the communication blackout, we confirmed he had 3 meetings with Westmore executives in the past month. As for flight attendant Whitfield, she's deleted all her social media accounts, but not before our team archived multiple posts showing racial bias. Marcus absorbed this information, his mind calculating the legal and strategic implications. What about the airline's official position? They've issued a statement claiming they're investigating the incident and that safety protocols were followed based on available information, Sophia Washington interjected. Standard corporate damage control, but we have them cornered with the evidence. A notification pinged on Marcus's center screen. The first passenger videos have hit social media, Aisha reported from Tech Fusion headquarters. Unedited footage, clearly showing you were calm and cooperative throughout. The hashtag Doc or Flying While Black is trending nationwide. Marcus nodded grimly. His personal humiliation was becoming a rallying point for a larger conversation about racial profiling. While that might ultimately lead to positive change, his immediate concern was salvaging the merger and protecting his company from Westmore's predatory attack. "What's the status on the stock?" he asked. "Still down 30%, replied Jerome Davis, Tech Fusion's CFO. "But it's stabilized since news broke about your release and the potential setup. The market is in wait-and-see mode." "And Westmore's hostile takeover attempt?" "He's secured commitments from about 7% of shareholders, mostly smaller investors who panicked when the stock plummeted," Jerome explained. "He needs at least 30% to have any realistic chance." Marcus checked the time. 4 hours until Zhang's midnight deadline. 3 hours until they would land in San Francisco. The margin for error was dangerously thin. "We need to neutralize Westmore's advantage," Marcus decided. "Jerome, contact our major institutional investors. I want personal calls to each one, explaining what's happening. Diane, prepare an SEC filing detailing the market manipulation evidence. And Aisha, arrange an emergency video call with Wei Zhang. I need to speak with him directly." As his team sprang into action, Marcus's phone buzzed with a news alert. He opened it to see Richard Westmore's face filling the screen as he gave an interview to a major business network. "This is about business, not race," Westmore was saying, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his expression one of practiced concern. "Tech Fusion's leadership has made a series of questionable decisions that have eroded shareholder value. This unfortunate incident on the flight is just a distraction from the real issues. Reynolds is playing the race card to avoid accountability for his company's underperformance." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Tech Fusion had outperformed industry benchmarks for 12 consecutive quarters under his leadership, a fact Westmore conveniently ignored. "He's trying to frame this as a business dispute, not what it really is. A racially motivated attack on a successful black-owned company," Marcus observed to Sophia. "Classic gaslighting technique," she agreed. "But we have the evidence to expose it." The cabin phone rang, and the pilot's voice came through. "Mr. Reynolds, we've been notified of an unexpected route change due to weather concerns. Air traffic control is diverting us north." Marcus and Sophia exchanged knowing glances. There were no significant weather systems between their position and San Francisco. "Another delay tactic," Marcus concluded. "Westmore must have connections in the FAA too." "I'll handle it," Sophia said, already dialing on her phone. "My contact at the Department of Transportation owes me a favor." 20 minutes later, they were back on their original flight path after Sophia's intervention, but the delay had cost them precious time. The clock was ticking relentlessly toward midnight. The video call with Wei Zhang connected, his concerned face appearing on the center screen. The Chinese tech entrepreneur had been a steadfast partner throughout the merger negotiations. "Marcus, this situation is most disturbing," Zhang began. "My board is extremely concerned." "I understand, Wei," Marcus replied, "but I want to assure you that I'll be in San Francisco before the deadline. More importantly, you need to know that this entire incident was orchestrated by Richard Westmore to derail our merger and depress Tech Fusion stock for a hostile takeover." Zhang's expression shifted from concern to outrage as Marcus presented the evidence they'd uncovered. "This is corporate sabotage of the highest order," the Chinese businessman concluded. "And to use racial discrimination as a weapon? Despicable." "We're fighting back," Marcus assured him. "But I need to know, are you still with us?" Zhang didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. In fact, I'm prepared to increase our offer by 5%, as a show of confidence. Westmore must not be allowed to win through such dishonorable tactics." Relief washed over Marcus. With Zhang's continued support, half the battle was won. Now he just needed to reach San Francisco in time and rally enough shareholder support to fend off Westmore's takeover attempt. As the call ended, Aisha's voice came urgently through the speaker. "Marcus, breaking news. Westmore has called an emergency press conference for 9 p.m. Pacific time. Our sources say he's planning to announce increased backing for his takeover bid. 3 hours before the merger deadline, Westmore was making his move, trying to build momentum that would make his hostile takeover seem inevitable. We need to counter this immediately, Marcus decided. Prepare the jet's satellite system for a live broadcast. I'm going to address this head-on. While his team scrambled to set up the technical requirements, Marcus drafted his remarks, carefully balancing corporate strategy with the undeniable racial component of what had transpired. This wasn't just about saving his company, it was about standing up against the use of racial profiling as a business tactic. At precisely 8:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 30 minutes before Westmore's scheduled appearance, Marcus went live across multiple platforms simultaneously: business news networks, social media, and a direct feed to TechFusion's investors and employees. "Good evening," he began, his expression resolute. "Today, I experienced something that too many Black Americans face: the assumption of criminality based solely on the color of my skin. But this was not a random incident. Evidence now confirms that this was a coordinated attack orchestrated by Richard Westmore and his associates to prevent our historic merger with Global Tech and facilitate a hostile takeover of TechFusion." Marcus proceeded to outline the connections they had uncovered, presenting the evidence methodically without hyperbole. The facts were damning enough without embellishment. "This goes beyond corporate competition," he continued. "It represents a dangerous intersection of racial discrimination and corporate sabotage. The question for our shareholders, partners, and the American public is clear. Will we allow success to be undermined by these tactics? Will we permit racial profiling to be weaponized as a business strategy?" As Marcus spoke, the response was immediate and overwhelming. "Stand with TechFusion" began trending on social media. Institutional investors issued statements rejecting Westmore's takeover bid. And most significantly, a coalition of Black business leaders announced a fund to purchase TechFusion shares at pre-crisis prices to block the hostile takeover. Westmore hastily canceled his press conference. "The tide is turning," Sophia observed as they monitored the response. "But we're not out of the woods yet." She was right. Despite the positive momentum, they were still racing against the clock. The jet was now crossing into California, but they were still over an hour from San Francisco, with less than 2 hours until Zhang's deadline. Just as it seemed they might make it, Marcus's phone rang with an urgent call from the pilot. "Mr. Reynolds, we've received instructions to land at Sacramento for a random security inspection. They're claiming it's standard procedure, but in 20 years of flying, I've never seen this happen to a private aircraft in domestic airspace." One last obstacle thrown in their path. One final attempt to prevent Marcus from reaching San Francisco in time. "Westmore," Marcus said, his voice cold with certainty. "His desperation is showing." "I'll handle this one too," Sophia stated, already dialing. "But we need a contingency plan in case we're forced to land." Marcus stared out the window at the California landscape below, his mind racing through options. Then, an idea crystallized. Audacious, unprecedented, but potentially game-changing. "Aisha," he said, reconnecting with his chief of staff. "Contact Zhang. Tell him we're shifting to Plan Omega." Plan Omega had been developed as a theoretical last resort, never seriously considered until this moment. It would rewrite the rules of the merger in a way that would shock the business world and render Westmore's sabotage attempts meaningless. As Sophia successfully fought off the landing directive, allowing their flight to continue to San Francisco, Marcus prepared for the boldest move of his career. The jet began its final approach to San Francisco International Airport, with just 57 minutes until the midnight deadline. The corporate war wasn't over, but Marcus Reynolds was about to change the battlefield entirely. Have you ever seen powerful people use underhanded tactics to maintain their dominance? Comment Number 1, if you believe what Westmore did should be illegal. Hit that like button if you're inspired by Marcus's resilience in the face of such blatant discrimination and corporate sabotage. Subscribe to our channel to witness more stories of triumph against systemic injustice. Do you think Marcus will make it to the signing in time? What could this mysterious, Plan Omega B. Will Westmore face consequences for his despicable actions? Or will he escape justice like so many powerful people do? Stay tuned as our story continues to unfold. The private jet touched down at San Francisco International Airport at 11:08 p.m., leaving just 52 minutes until Zhang's midnight deadline. As the aircraft taxied toward the private terminal, Marcus was already on his phone coordinating the final stage of their journey. The car is waiting on the tarmac, Aisha confirmed from Tech Fusion headquarters. Police escort has been arranged through downtown. Traffic estimates show you should reach Global Tech headquarters by 11:40. 20 minutes to spare, Marcus murmured, gathering his documents. Too close for comfort, but we'll make it. As the jet's door opened, Marcus and Sophia descended the stairs to find a sleek black SUV waiting with a driver holding the door open. 2 police motorcycles idled nearby, ready to escort them through the late-night San Francisco traffic. Mr. Reynolds? The driver greeted him professionally. We're cleared for priority access to the freeway. We should have you at Global Tech headquarters in 30 minutes. Marcus slid into the back seat with Sophia, his briefcase containing the physical merger documents clutched firmly in his hand. After everything that had happened, he wasn't taking any chances with digital-only copies. The motorcade pulled away from the airport, lights flashing as they accelerated onto the highway. San Francisco's iconic skyline glittered in the distance, the Global Tech Tower prominently visible with its distinctive blue-lit crown. We're going to make it, Sophia remarked, checking her watch. Despite everything Westmore threw at us. He's not done yet, Marcus cautioned, his voice still rough from his untreated throat condition. We need to stay vigilant until the documents are signed. His caution proved prescient. 20 minutes into their drive, as they approached the outskirts of downtown San Francisco, a police radio crackled with an alert. Be advised, there's an accident blocking all lanes on the Bay Bridge approach. Traffic is at a standstill. Recommend alternate route. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Another Westmore tactic? Sophia wondered aloud. Almost certainly, Marcus replied grimly. Driver, what alternatives do we have? We can try surface streets through the Mission District. The driver suggested, already adjusting their route. It'll be tight, but we should still make it by 11:50. 10 minutes to spare. The margin for error was evaporating quickly. As they diverted through San Francisco's streets, Marcus received an urgent call from Jerome, his CFO. Marcus, Westmore just issued a statement claiming he now has commitments from 28% of shareholders. He only needs 35% to effectively block the merger. Is it true? Marcus asked sharply. We can't verify, but it's causing panic. 3 institutional investors who previously rejected his offer are now reconsidering. The SUV turned onto a narrow street, lined with restaurants and bars, the police escorts clearing a path through the late-night traffic. Marcus could see the Global Tech Tower getting closer, now just 15 blocks away. Suddenly, flashing lights appeared in their rearview mirror. Not their escort, but a police cruiser signaling them to pull over. Do not stop, Marcus instructed, the driver firmly. Our escort will handle this. One of their motorcycle officers dropped back to intercept the cruiser, while the SUV continued forward. Through the rear window, Marcus could see the officer engaging in an animated conversation with the patrol car's occupants. What now? Sophia asked, tension evident in her voice. Keep moving, Marcus replied. We have a legitimate police escort. If it's another delay tactic, our officers will handle it. The driver pressed on, but 3 blocks later, 2 more police cars appeared ahead, blocking the intersection. This time they had no choice but to stop. An officer approached the driver's window. License and registration, please. We've received a report that this vehicle was involved in a hit-and-run incident near the airport. That's impossible, the driver protested. We came directly from the private terminal with a police escort. Nevertheless, I need to see your documentation and speak with all passengers, the officer insisted. Marcus checked his watch. 11:38 p.m. The delays were adding up, exactly as Westmore had planned. Sophia rolled down her window. Officer, I'm Sophia Washington, attorney for Marcus Reynolds, CEO of Tech Fusion. We are en route to a critical business meeting with a midnight deadline. Your colleagues are escorting us, as you can see. We still need to investigate this report, the officer replied inflexibly. Marcus made a split-second decision. Leaning forward, he spoke directly to the officer. I believe you're being used as part of a corporate sabotage attempt. If you delay us without legitimate cause, you may be unwittingly participating in illegal market manipulation that's currently under SEC investigation. The officer hesitated, clearly unprepared for this response. Call your supervisor, Marcus suggested. Explain that you're holding Marcus Reynolds, and ask if there have been any unusual requests regarding my movements tonight. Something in Marcus's tone must have registered with the officer. After a brief radio conversation with his supervisor, his demeanor changed noticeably. You're free to proceed, Mr. Reynolds, he said, suddenly respectful. We'll follow up on who filed that false report. As they pulled away, Marcus's phone rang again. It was Wei Zhang. Marcus, where are you? It's 11:43. My investors are getting nervous. I'm 17 minutes away, Marcus replied honestly. We've encountered some obstacles. Westmore's people are here, Zhang informed him. They're telling my board that you won't make it and offering an alternate deal directly with them if they abandon our merger. Marcus's grip tightened on his phone. Wei, do you trust me? There was a pause before Zhang answered. I do. Then implement the first phase of Plan Omega. I'll be there in time to complete it. Are you certain? Zhang asked, clearly understanding the magnitude of what Marcus was proposing. Completely, Marcus confirmed. Westmore wants a war. Let's give him one he can't win. As the call ended, their SUV hit another unexpected delay, a delivery truck accidentally blocking the entire street. By the time they maneuvered around it, the clock read 11:52. We're not going to make it, the driver said, anxiety evident in his voice as he navigated the final blocks toward Global Tech headquarters. Yes, we will, Marcus replied with calm determination. He turned to Sophia. Time for our final contingency. Sophia nodded and made a quick call. Seconds later, the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors filled the air as a private helicopter descended toward an empty parking lot just 2 blocks from their position. Our ride is here, Marcus announced, grabbing his briefcase as the SUV pulled over. Together, Marcus and Sophia sprinted toward the helicopter, ducking under the whirring blades as they climbed aboard. The pilot gave a thumbs up and immediately began ascending. Global Tech helipad, top priority, Marcus instructed, checking his watch one last time. 11:56 p.m. 4 minutes to save the merger, stop Westmore's takeover, and preserve everything Marcus had built. The helicopter banked sharply, navigating between San Francisco's skyscrapers as it made directly for the Global Tech tower that loomed just ahead. Below them, Marcus could see figures hurrying into the building, men in expensive suits who he guessed were Westmore's representatives, making their final push to scuttle the deal before he could arrive. The helicopter touched down on Global Tech's rooftop helipad at 11:58 p.m., its skids barely connecting with the landing pad before Marcus was out the door, briefcase in hand, running toward the roof access with Sophia close behind. 2 minutes to midnight. 2 minutes to determine the fate of 2 companies, thousands of jobs, and a historic merger that would change the tech landscape forever. Marcus burst through the boardroom doors of Global Tech's executive floor at precisely 11:59 p.m., Sophia Washington 1 step behind him. The assembled executives, lawyers, and investors turned in unison, shock evident on their faces. At the head of the long table, Wei Zhang rose to his feet, a relieved smile spreading across his features. Gentlemen, ladies, Marcus announced, slightly breathless but projecting absolute authority despite his disheveled appearance. I believe we have a merger to complete. On the far side of the room, Marcus spotted Richard Westmore himself, flanked by his legal team. The silver-haired CEO's confident smirk faltered at the sight of Marcus standing there, documents in hand, with 1 minute to spare. Reynolds, Westmore recovered quickly, his tone dismissive. Your dramatic entrance doesn't change the facts. Your company's stock has collapsed, your reputation is in tatters, and your shareholders are flocking to my superior offer. Marcus strode purposefully to the center of the room, placing his briefcase on the polished conference table. "Richard, your tactics today have revealed your true character to the world. Using racial profiling as a business strategy wasn't just morally reprehensible. It was a miscalculation that will cost you everything." The enormous wall-mounted screens in the boardroom suddenly flickered to life, displaying multiple news channels simultaneously. Every major network was covering the story, with headlines scrolling across the bottom of the screens. CEO racially profiled on flight in apparent corporate sabotage scheme. Tech Fusion stock rebounds as evidence of manipulation emerges. Westmore. Enterprises under SEC investigation for market manipulation. Flight crew paid off to target black CEO, documents reveal. Westmore's face reddened as he saw the coverage. This is sensationalist nonsense. The SEC investigation will find nothing, because there's nothing to find. Actually, Sophia interjected, her professional demeanor unwavering. The SEC has already issued preliminary findings. They've frozen trading of Westmore Enterprises stock pending a full investigation into coordinated market manipulation. Marcus checked his watch. Midnight exactly. He turned to Wei Zhang. "Shall we proceed with the signing?" Zhang nodded, gesturing to the documents already laid out at his end of the table. The terms remain as agreed. As Marcus moved to join Zhang, Westmore made one final desperate attempt. "This is madness. Reynolds' company has lost a third of its value today. The merger terms should be completely renegotiated." Zhang regarded Westmore coolly. "Mr. Westmore, when I choose business partners, I value integrity above all. Today, Mr. Reynolds has demonstrated extraordinary integrity under the most difficult circumstances. You, by contrast, have revealed yourself to be a man who would use racism as a business tactic. Which of you do you think I prefer to work with?" The room fell silent as the impact of Zhang's words settled. Several of Westmore's own associates shifted uncomfortably, distancing themselves subtly from their boss. Marcus and Zhang met in the middle of the long table, signing the merger documents with the collected executives as witnesses. As they completed the final signatures, the clock on the wall showed 12:04 a.m., 4 minutes past the deadline. But Wei Zhang had made it clear that Marcus's extraordinary efforts had earned him the extension. The moment the signing was complete, Aisha's voice came through on the speakerphone that had been set up on the table. "Marcus, you're live on air in 30 seconds. All major networks are carrying this." Marcus straightened his tie and turned to face the video conference camera that had been hastily positioned for this purpose. Around the room, executives and lawyers fell silent, aware they were witnessing a pivotal moment. The red light on the camera illuminated, and Marcus was instantly addressing millions of viewers across America and around the world. "Good evening. My name is Marcus Reynolds, CEO of Tech Fusion Enterprises. Today, I was racially profiled on a commercial flight, detained without cause, and nearly lost a historic $4.8 billion merger because a flight attendant couldn't believe a black man legitimately belonged in first class." His voice was powerful despite the lingering rawness from his untreated throat condition. But this was no random incident of bias. Evidence has now confirmed that this was an orchestrated attack, a deliberate attempt to use racial profiling as a corporate weapon to manipulate markets and facilitate a hostile takeover. Marcus proceeded to outline the evidence connecting Westmore to the airline crew, the suspicious trading patterns, and the coordinated media narrative that had initially framed him as a security threat. Tonight, despite these extraordinary obstacles, I'm pleased to announce that Tech Fusion and Global Tech have successfully completed our merger, creating the world's most innovative security technology company and thousands of new American jobs. From the corner of his eye, Marcus could see Westmore and his team quietly slipping out of the boardroom, their scheme in ruins. "This isn't just a business story," Marcus continued. "It's a stark reminder that for people of color in America, success doesn't shield you from racism. It often makes you a bigger target. But it's also a reminder that when exposed to the light of truth, these tactics will fail." As Marcus concluded his statement, social media was erupting with support. Tech Fusion Strong and Flying While Black were the top trending topics nationwide. The airline stock was now in free fall, while Tech Fusion shares had dramatically rebounded, recovering most of their losses as the truth emerged. Black leaders and organizations across the country were rallying to Marcus's defense. The Congressional Black Caucus called for hearings on discrimination in the airline industry. Civil rights organizations announced boycotts of the airline until they implemented comprehensive anti-bias training and fired everyone involved in the incident. Meanwhile, the airline had issued a tepid statement claiming they were investigating the matter and that the comfort and safety of all passengers remains our highest priority. They made no mention of racial bias, characterizing the incident as a misunderstanding, a framing that only intensified the backlash. As the media storm continued to build, internal emails from the airline began leaking to the press. Most damaging was a series of messages from Captain Bradley Harrington, revealing a history of discriminatory incidents and complaints that had been systematically buried by airline management. In the Global Tech boardroom, the celebration of the completed merger was tempered by the gravity of what had transpired. Marcus had won this battle, but at significant personal cost. The humiliation of being handcuffed and publicly detained would linger, as would the knowledge that his success had made him a target. As the party wound down around 2 a.m., Marcus slipped away to conduct one final interview, this one from the back of his car as he headed to his hotel. The interviewer was Elise Montgomery, a respected black journalist known for her incisive coverage of the intersection of race and business. "Mr. Reynolds, after everything you experienced today, what message do you have for other black professionals facing similar barriers?" she asked. Marcus thought carefully before responding. "What happened to me today happens to black Americans at every level of society, every day. The difference is, most don't have the resources to fight back as effectively. My message is simple. Document everything, know your rights, and never internalize the limitations others try to place on you because of your race." As the interview concluded, Marcus's phone lit up with a breaking news alert. Westmore appears on Business Channel, claims Reynolds playing race card to distract from business failures. Even in defeat, Westmore was doubling down, attempting to reframe the narrative. But the evidence was too overwhelming, the racial dynamics too obvious for his spin to gain traction. Marcus's car pulled up to his hotel just before 3 a.m. He was exhausted but victorious. The merger was secured. Westmore's takeover attempt had failed, and the truth about the day's events was spreading rapidly across the nation. But he was still in San Francisco, hundreds of miles from where he needed to be tomorrow to finalize the regulatory aspects of the merger. And given Westmore's persistence, Marcus knew the fight was far from over. Dawn broke over San Francisco as Marcus emerged from his hotel, having snatched barely 3 hours of restless sleep. The events of the previous day had left him physically exhausted, but mentally vigilant, aware that Westmore might have one final card to play. "Car's ready, Mr. Reynolds," reported Kevin Dawson, the head of Tech Fusion's security team, who had flown in overnight with reinforcements. After yesterday's orchestrated attack, Marcus had implemented enhanced security protocols for himself and his key executives. "What's our status?" Marcus asked as they moved swiftly through the hotel's service entrance, avoiding the cluster of reporters gathered at the main doors. "Your private helicopter will take you to Sacramento, where the regulatory filing needs to be completed in person by noon," Kevin explained. "Ms. Washington is already on her way to the helipad. Mr. Zhang will meet you at the regulatory office with his team." Marcus nodded, scanning the busy morning streets for any signs of unusual activity. The final regulatory approval was the last hurdle before the merger became irreversible. If Westmore was going to make one last desperate attempt to derail the deal, it would be now. His phone buzzed with a message from Aisha. Satellite imagery shows unusual road construction started overnight on the main route between Sacramento Airport and the regulatory office. Coincidence? "Westmore," Marcus muttered. The man's resources and determination were proving formidable. "Take alternate route, Charlie," he instructed Kevin, "and have the backup transport ready at waypoint 3 just in case." The car wove through San Francisco's morning traffic toward the helipad. Marcus used these precious minutes to review the final merger documentation and check on Tech Fusion's stock price, which had recovered to just 15% below its pre-incident value. Not perfect, but a remarkable comeback given yesterday's events. Arriving at the helipad, Marcus found Sophia already waiting, engaged in an intense phone conversation. Her expression was grim as she ended the call. "Westmore's getting desperate," she reported as they boarded the helicopter. "He's filed an emergency injunction claiming the merger violates antitrust regulations. It's baseless, but it could tie us up in court long enough to miss today's filing deadline." "Judge assigned?" Marcus asked as they lifted off, the sprawling Bay Area spreading beneath them. "Judge William Hargrove, Eastern District," Sophia replied. "No known connections to Westmore, but he's historically conservative on business matters." Marcus processed this information while watching the landscape change from urban density to the open farmland of California's Central Valley. "Timeline on the injunction hearing?" "That's the problem," Sophia said. "It's scheduled for 11 a.m., giving us just 1 hour afterward to complete the filing if we win." The helicopter pilot's voice came through their headsets. "Mr. Reynolds, air traffic control is reporting unexpected restricted airspace over our planned route due to a military exercise. We're being instructed to divert north by 60 miles. Marcus and Sophia exchanged knowing glances. There was no scheduled military exercise. This was Westmore pulling strings again, attempting to delay them just enough to miss the noon deadline. "Options?" Marcus asked the pilot. "We could contest it, but that would involve landing and filing formal paperwork. Or we take the diversion, adding about 40 minutes to our flight time." "Neither is acceptable," Marcus decided. "Sophia, call your contact at the Department of Transportation. Again. And pilot, stand by for new clearance. I'm confident this exercise will be rescheduled very shortly." While Sophia worked her connections in Washington, Marcus received an urgent call from Weijing. "Marcus, Westmore's representatives are, here at the regulatory office," the Chinese businessman reported. "They're telling everyone the merger is dead and offering the regulators evidence that Tech Fusion's security technology poses national security risks if merged with a company that has Chinese connections." It was a xenophobic play, attempting to trigger national security concerns to block the merger. Despite Global Tech being an American company founded by a Chinese-American entrepreneur, Westmore was trying to paint it as a foreign threat. "Classic divide and conquer," Marcus observed. "He's trying to pit us against each other using racial and national origin biases. Stand firm, Wei. We anticipated this." Thanks to Sophia's intervention, the mysterious military exercise was suddenly canceled, allowing their helicopter to proceed directly to Sacramento. However, they had lost precious time and were now cutting it extremely close. Landing at Sacramento Executive Airport at 10:40 a.m., they had 20 minutes to reach the courthouse for the injunction hearing, then potentially just 1 hour afterward, to file the final regulatory paperwork across town. "Our vehicle is gone," Kevin reported as they stepped onto the tarmac. The secure car that had been arranged was nowhere to be seen. "Towed for illegal parking 10 minutes ago, a ground crew," member explained apologetically. "Nothing we could do." Another delay tactic. Marcus didn't waste time expressing frustration. "Call a rideshare," he instructed Kevin. "Already on it, but there's a 20-minute wait time." Time they didn't have. Marcus scanned the small airport lot and spotted a food delivery driver unloading from a modest hatchback. "Excuse me," Marcus approached the young woman. "I'm in an emergency situation. Would you be willing to drive us to the federal courthouse? I'll pay $5,000 for your time." The delivery driver, a college student named Ashley, was initially skeptical but quickly convinced when Sophia showed her bar association ID and explained the situation. Minutes later, they were speeding toward the courthouse in Ashley's compact car, Marcus and Sophia working frantically on their phones from the back seat. "Judge Hargrove has a reputation for punctuality," Sophia warned as they hit morning traffic. "If we're not there when he calls the case, he might rule by default." Marcus checked his watch. 10:55 a.m., 5 minutes to reach the courthouse, park, get through security, and find the correct courtroom. "Ashley," Marcus leaned forward. "Is there any faster route?" "Actually, yes," the young woman replied, suddenly, swerving onto a side street. "I deliver to that courthouse 3 times a week. There's a service entrance with less security if you're with courthouse staff or vendors. She pulled up to a loading dock behind the courthouse at 10:58 a.m. Marcus pressed a stack of bills into her hand. "Thank you. You may have just saved thousands of jobs." Sophia flashed her attorney credentials to the security guard, explaining they had an emergency hearing. With seconds to spare, they rushed into courtroom C just as the bailiff called, "Westmore Enterprises versus Tech Fusion and Global Tech, emergency injunction hearing." Richard Westmore himself sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by a team of high-powered attorneys. His confident expression faltered momentarily when he saw Marcus and Sophia enter. The hearing was brief, but intense. Westmore's lawyers argued that the merger created monopolistic concerns in the cybersecurity sector. Sophia systematically dismantled their claims, pointing out that the combined company would still have less than 20% market share, far from a monopoly position. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Sophia concluded, "this last-minute injunction request comes after a documented attempt by the plaintiff to sabotage my client through racial profiling and market manipulation, all of which is currently under SEC investigation. This injunction is not about protecting competition. It's about completing an illegal takeover scheme that began with an orchestrated incident on a commercial airline." Judge Hargrove, a stern man in his 60s, considered the arguments briefly before delivering his ruling. The court finds insufficient evidence of antitrust concerns to justify an emergency injunction. The merger may proceed pending normal regulatory review. Case dismissed. Westmore's face darkened with fury as Marcus and Sophia rushed from the courtroom. It was 11:32 a.m., 28 minutes to reach the regulatory office across town and file the final paperwork. Outside, they found Ashley waiting with her car. "Thought you might need a ride to your next stop," she said with a smile. "California, Department of Business Oversight," Marcus confirmed. "Fast as you can." As they navigated through Sacramento's streets, Marcus received an alarming call from Wei Zhang. "Marcus, there's a problem. Someone called in a bomb threat to the regulatory building. It's been evacuated and closed. They say it won't reopen until tomorrow." This was Westmore's final play, a desperate, likely illegal attempt to force them to miss the filing deadline. Marcus thought quickly. "Wei, contact the department head directly. Explain the situation. See if they'll accept an emergency filing elsewhere." As Zhang worked his connections, Marcus spotted a news helicopter hovering over downtown Sacramento, undoubtedly covering the bomb threat story. "I have an idea," he said suddenly. "A bit unorthodox, but it might work." Using his emergency authority as CEO, Marcus made a quick call to Tech Fusion's head of public relations, instructing them to contact the news station immediately with an exclusive story offer in exchange for a small favor. 15 minutes later, at 11:47 a.m., Marcus, Sophia, and Wei Zhang stood in a hotel conference room 6 blocks from the evacuated regulatory building. With them was Commissioner Janet Rivera of the Department of Business Oversight, who had agreed to accept their filing in this alternative location, an unprecedented accommodation. Given the extraordinary circumstances and the clear pattern of interference with a legitimate business transaction, I've decided to accept this filing directly, Commissioner Rivera explained as cameras from the local news station recorded the historic moment. At precisely 11:59 a.m., 1 minute before the deadline, Marcus and Wei signed the final regulatory documents, officially completing the merger that Westmore had gone to such extraordinary lengths to prevent. As the commissioner applied the official stamp to the documents declaring them properly filed, Marcus finally allowed himself a moment of relief. They had done it, overcome racial profiling, corporate sabotage, and countless obstacles to create what would become one of the most significant technology companies in America. The battle had been won, but Marcus knew the war for true equality in American business was far from over. As he shook Wei Zhang's hand for the cameras, he silently renewed his commitment to use his position and resources to fight the systemic barriers that had nearly destroyed everything he had built. 6 months after the dramatic events that nearly derailed the historic merger, Marcus Reynolds stood at the podium in Tech Fusion Global Tech's newly completed headquarters in San Francisco. Behind him, a diverse group of executives flanked a ribbon, stretched across the entrance to the building's main atrium. Camera flashes punctuated the moment as Marcus addressed the assembled crowd of employees, investors, media, and special guests. Today, we celebrate not just the opening of a building, but the triumph of justice over discrimination, of innovation over sabotage, and of unity over division, Marcus declared, his powerful voice no longer hampered by the throat condition that proper medication now kept under control. The merged Tech Fusion Global Tech had exceeded all market expectations, with the stock price now double what it had been before the infamous flight incident. The company had already hired over 4,000 new employees, with 500 positions, specifically created in Helena, Montana, a deliberate decision that Marcus had made partly as a reminder to the local authorities who had participated in his unjust detention. In the front row sat Wei Jiang, now co-chairman of the board, his steadfast support during the crisis having cemented a business partnership that had evolved into a genuine friendship. Beside him was Sophia Washington, whose legal brilliance had not only saved the merger, but had subsequently spearheaded a landmark discrimination lawsuit against the airline. Our journey to this day wasn't easy, Marcus continued, scanning the diverse faces of his team. Many of you watched in real time as I was profiled, detained, and nearly lost everything simply because a flight attendant couldn't imagine a black man legitimately sitting in first class. The previous month, the airline had settled the discrimination lawsuit for $95 million, rather than face a public trial where all the evidence of their complicity would be exposed. As part of the settlement, they had implemented comprehensive anti-bias training, revised their security protocols, and terminated both Captain Harrington and Flight Attendant Whitfield. But today isn't about dwelling on past injustices, Marcus continued. It's about the future we're building together, a future where innovation knows no color, where opportunity has no racial barriers, and where technology serves humanity in all its beautiful diversity. He gestured to the expansive campus behind him, where engineers, programmers, and business professionals from dozens of countries and every background imaginable now collaborated on cutting-edge security technology. I'm proud to announce that Tech Fusion Global Tech is launching the Equity and Innovation Foundation with an initial endowment of $100 million, Marcus revealed to thunderous applause. This foundation will support Black and other underrepresented entrepreneurs in the tech sector, providing capital, mentorship, and resources to ensure that talent rises regardless of race or background. In the months since the merger, Marcus had become more than a successful CEO. He had emerged as a powerful voice for corporate accountability and racial equity. His experience had resonated with millions who had faced similar discrimination, though few had his resources to fight back so effectively. The SEC investigation into Richard Westmore had uncovered extensive evidence of market manipulation, resulting in criminal charges against several of his associates. Westmore himself had resigned as CEO of his company amid the scandal, though he continued to deny any wrongdoing. His once formidable business empire was now in shambles, with shareholders fleeing and partners distancing themselves from the taint of his tactics. And finally, Marcus concluded his speech, I'm pleased to announce that as of this morning, Tech Fusion Global Tech has acquired a controlling interest in Transcontinental Airlines. A collective gasp rippled through the audience, followed by knowing laughter and applause. The airline that had been the instrument of his humiliation was now under his control. Our first acts as majority shareholder will be to implement the industry's most rigorous anti-discrimination protocols, create a passenger bill of rights, and establish an independent review board for all security-related complaints. As Marcus cut the ribbon to officially open the new headquarters, the symbolism was lost on no one. In less than a year, he had transformed a moment of racial profiling and corporate sabotage into a platform for meaningful change, not just for himself, but for countless others who face similar barriers. Later that evening, at a private celebration for the company's leadership team, Marcus took a moment alone on the building's rooftop terrace, gazing out at the San Francisco skyline. Aisha, his loyal chief of staff, joined him with 2 glasses of champagne. To turning obstacles into opportunities, she toasted, handing him a glass. And to never forgetting where we came from, Marcus added, clinking his glass against hers. The door opened again and Sophia Washington stepped onto the terrace. The governor's office just called. The Anti-Discrimination in Commercial Transportation. bill we helped draft has passed the state legislature. They're calling it the Reynolds Act." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "That's a start, but we have a long way to go." "Speaking of which," Aisha interjected, checking her phone. "Ashley, the delivery driver who helped you reach the courthouse in Sacramento, she graduates from law school next month. The scholarship you arranged made it possible for her to finish without working 3 jobs." These were the moments that gave Marcus the most satisfaction, not the business victories or even the personal vindication, but the knowledge that his position allowed him to create tangible opportunities for others. As the celebration continued inside, Marcus remained on the terrace a moment longer, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. From the young coder sleeping on a friend's couch, to the CEO fighting for his company's survival in handcuffs, to now leading one of the most influential technology companies in the world, the incidents on that flight had been a painful reminder that for people of color in America, success didn't shield you from racism. Sometimes it made you a bigger target. But it had also reinforced Marcus's conviction that with the right resources, preparation, and allies, even the most entrenched systems of discrimination could be challenged and changed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles for equity in the corporate world. But tonight, Marcus Reynolds allowed himself to savor this victory. Not just for himself, but for every black entrepreneur who had been told they didn't belong, every professional of color who had been profiled or doubted, and every young person looking for evidence that excellence could eventually triumph over prejudice. The story of the black CEO denied tea in first class had become something much larger, a case study in resilience, a testament to preparedness, and most importantly, a powerful reminder that the journey toward true equality required vigilance, courage, and the determination to stand firm even when the world seemed determined to knock you out of the sky. The story of Marcus Reynolds offers profound insights into the persistence of racial discrimination in America and the extraordinary resilience required to overcome it. Even at the highest echelons of success, black professionals remain vulnerable to having their accomplishments questioned and their presence challenged in spaces traditionally dominated by white people. The incident on Flight 1380 demonstrates how quickly a black executive can be transformed from a respected CEO to a suspected threat based solely on racial bias. Yet the narrative also provides valuable lessons in preparation and resistance. Marcus prevailed not just because of his personal fortitude, but because he had systematically built networks, legal resources, and contingency plans that could be activated when discrimination threatened his success. His chief of staff's immediate documentation, Sophia Washington's legal expertise, and Plan Omega all represent strategic foresight that made his triumph possible. The corporate sabotage orchestrated by Westmore reveals how racism can be weaponized as a business tactic, exploiting existing biases within systems to target competitors. This dimension highlights the need for greater accountability in both corporate governance and public accommodations like airlines. Perhaps most importantly, Marcus's victory reminds us that overcoming discrimination isn't just about individual success, but about creating pathways for others. By establishing the Equity and Innovation Foundation, acquiring the airline to implement anti-discrimination protocols, and supporting people like Ashley, Marcus demonstrates that true leadership means using one's position to dismantle the very barriers that almost destroyed one's own journey. The ultimate lesson is clear. While racism remains a powerful force in American society, it can be confronted and defeated through preparation, solidarity, documentation, and a commitment to systemic change that extends beyond personal vindication. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination in a professional setting? How did you respond? Share your story in the comments below to help others know they're not alone. If Marcus Reynolds' journey inspired you, hit that like button to show your support for those fighting against racial injustice every day. Do you believe businesses should be held legally accountable when they participate in racial profiling? What systems would you put in place if you were in Marcus's position after acquiring the airline? Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that challenge us to create a more equitable world. Thank you for joining us for this important story. Remember, true change happens when we recognize discrimination isn't just a personal problem, but a collective responsibility. Together, we can build a future where success is determined by merit, not prejudice. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and never stop fighting for justice.